Hello and welcome to the FinTech Finance Virtual Net. Today we're going to be talking about cloud, connectors and everything in between for a bank. And joining me today, I actually have Noam Zeigerson from Tandem Bank. Noam, how are you doing today?
Hey Doug, good, I'm great. How are you?
Absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much for joining us here today. Could I get you to give our viewers a bit of background to yourself and your role at Tandem, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I joined Tandem 2 years ago, actually as the Chief Data Officer. My background is about 20 years of development technologies. I built two startup companies around data technologies. Many of them serve banking, but also other sectors. And I joined Tandem to lead the core data artificial intelligence capabilities of the bank. After about 6 months, the opportunity came to take responsibility also on technology and product and reorganize the tech product data in Tandem and go for a greenfield project to rebuild the whole digital bank from scratch. That was an awesome opportunity. The team and myself reorganized ourselves and went on a 12-month journey. 9 of them, we built the whole digital bank from scratch. 3 months, we were doing a lot of testing and dress rehearsal toward the migration of the customers from the old bank to the new bank. And here we are 2 months after a very successful migration with a really exciting product platform technology in our hands to actually build the future of Tandem to help people manage their life with money and help the planet as part of our green initiatives.
Amazing. I mean, it just sounds like such a brilliant opportunity, and I'm so happy that it went well. Now, to kick off the session, I'd like to ask. A lot of banks nowadays try to look like they have the flashiest front end, and maybe only in the small kind of financial forums do we hear people talking about the exciting back end possibilities. Why should traditional banks or even some of the newer ones like yourselves start looking to invest in improving their core systems at a very agile rate?
Well, as I said, I was lucky enough to work with many industries and build a lot of tech solutions. However, banks were always the most complicated core environments that I worked with. And the reason for that is because banking are many people not aware, but very, very early in the curve of technologies, from the 1950s, adopted the first computer from IBM, and since then, every decade introduced more and more technologies. So we're talking about 70 years of building core technologies inside the bank, created quite complex environment that as for banks to manage the risk and the control of managing people's money is a very, very challenging opportunity that sometimes slow down the ability to propose the right experience to customers, as well as to keep the system safe and resilient.
And I think that's such an important part, that last part there about the safe and resilient for a bank. People love trust, as well as those slick front ends. At the end of the day, you need to be trusted. Now, one thing that was also interesting about what you just said there is this 70-year journey from really adopting the first IBM computer to really where we are now. And that's caused large institutions to have huge amounts of data on their customers with legacy systems all in data silos and also not standardized. So what is the issue with that and how can we rectify that?
Exactly, Doug. When I joined banking about 20 years ago in my first project in a very big universal bank, a friend gave me this thick book that was the logical model of banking, where you can open and see thousands of tables and entities and fields about how you run a bank, how you manage a bank, and what kind of data you need in order to be a bank. And for me as a data geek, I was fascinated. I fell in love immediately. But seriously, the reason banks need so much data is, as you said, to build this trust with customers. In order to keep your deposit safe, we need to know you quite well. And even better, when we lend money to borrowers, we need to make sure some of those deposits that we use are very, very much safe and well funded. So that creates a lot of data coming into the banks. And the idea is, again, to reduce the risk of how we manage this sensitive business, while we are aware of the complexity and the sensitivity it introduced by collecting so much data and capturing for quite a long time during your life as a customer.
Interesting. Now, to kind of connect that lifelong data that customers accrue, I mean, a lot of people don't really change their banks. How can cloud-based technology really be the fuel, or at least the connecting wires between all these disparate technologies and disparate systems?
So banks were trying to build a very robust data management platform for more than 20 years now. One of the early versions of parallel compute, parallel processing of data was born in financial services. But again, the traditional enterprise technologies couldn't scale with the scale of data. And this is when open source and tech companies like Google, Yahoo, Facebook came with the open source project around data and analytics, which introduced much more robust ways to manage and to analyze data. But until the cloud was mature, banks were very struggling to build those clusters of big data on premise in a safe and robust way. When cloud became much more mature, this open source technology is now available in a much more manageable way. It's a platform as a service in all cloud providers, in a very secure. The top engineers in the world behind AWS, behind Google, behind Microsoft are building in a lot of resources a very secure way to manage data in big scales, almost like Google doing for itself when crawling the whole internet and bringing the whole internet into their big data environment.
Wow. I mean, it's so interesting to hear just how everything can be connected, and there are some companies that are doing it well, and it sounds like financial institutions are starting to get there. Now, I'm interested in finding out what use can institutions like Tandem make of this massive influx of information now that, I mean, you may have already had this information on your customers, but now you're actually getting to read it.
First and foremost, help customers. At the end, all this business is valuable for the benefit of people, helping people manage their life with money, reduce stress. For some people, money can be a very stressful thing. How do I know if I save enough? Should I borrow or should I not? Do I spend my money in the right way on the right things? So a lot of use cases are focused on bringing more benefits to customers. But saying that also ability for people inside of the bank, inside of the business to access the data in a more safe and secure way. Data governance and data security is very challenging because, you know, everyone wants access to everything, but it is absolutely not doable. You need to secure, you need to see what is the authorization for every line of business, for every person in the organization. And these new technologies introduce a much better way to manage access to the data, availability of the data. So actually people can leverage this value both for creating use cases and benefit for customers, as well as putting control and putting process of how we run as a business, single version of the truth, and all the other important EMI and business intelligence.
Yeah, now I think that single version of the truth not only helps your customers, but also leads me on to my next question, and how does connecting all this data and all this information together help your employees as well?
So yeah, that's great point. At the end, behind every successful business, it's the employees, it's the team, it's the talent people that actually write the software, write the solutions behind the scenes. And for them, data is something very much precious. How you prioritize what should you deliver to customers? How do you learn what customers preferred or didn't like so much in your proposition? How do you know that you can feel safe and trust better the customer and offer them better solutions? All this based on our people, our employees in the teams, analyzing data, using data, again, having a robust tool that allows you safely and securely to access the data in order to really take decisions and really build the business in a data-driven way is a very fun thing. How to build product and solutions to customers is really exciting. And you see the return immediately. That's what's even more exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine it. And it sounds like, Noam, as well, you really came into Tandem Bank at just the perfect time to really explore all these innovations. Now, one thing, and I know it's not often called the IT department strictly anymore, sometimes engineering as well, but the IT department as a whole still plays such a critical role for a bank. They're often coming up with all the innovative ideas or at least actioning them. So how can you harmonize your IT department with the other subdivisions from marketing all the way to the board to ensure that everyone's vision of digital transformation and innovation is on the same page and doable?
IT in banking went through a serious disruption from a department that used to be about system integration, integrating between out-of-the-box solutions. It found itself in a place where it must catch up and take the lead from companies like GAFA, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Alibaba, to companies like the fintechs and the neobanks that we see. All those companies are pure software companies, and they are almost ready with their own core banking capabilities. So actually, the competition became very much between tech companies, and some of those tech companies even build their own card processing, payment processing. Some of them even build their own general ledger systems, which it's very disrupting for the traditional bank's IT. So many of the banks already created innovation departments, innovation divisions that already bring across the company people from the business, from the operations, from technology, from data, to create cross-functional teams that actually solve problems together and work together toward outcomes. So if you go of an outcome, helping people to save, how we make people save better, save faster and smarter, you can bring a cross-functional team to challenge this outcome and to come with all kinds of ideas, having all the capabilities in a single cross-functional team, from the idea to the business validations, to the delivery, to the operation, and create like a very fast-moving business based on technologies. So this is really a totally different operational model for organization. And I saw many of the big banks that maybe some of the people can't imagine already work in this way.
That's very exciting to hear. So long have been the days where you just imagine the stuffy, paper-filled boardrooms and executive rooms of large traditional banks. It's brilliant to hear that that's changing. Now, you've brought up the fact that it's being led by this almost technology revolution, and one of the technologies or models to access all this openness that has been bandied about forever now, it seems, has been the open application interface, or the APIs. Now, we've gotten to the point where hundreds of APIs are actually being issued, to the point where maybe in IT departments it's getting increasingly difficult to know who is using what. How can companies or banks actually streamline that to kind of make their systems, again, run as smoothly as you've been talking about?
So back to cloud and open source technologies, there was a big breakthrough with microservices technologies, also known as event-driven architecture or bounded context architecture. Those microservice technologies that, again, were hard a little bit to put on premise, but are available within a click of a button on the cloud providers. Those technologies allow us to create business-bounded contexts that are API-driven, are event-driven, but they are very much also business-contained. So you can really understand what is the business purpose of this context, how do you communicate, what can you listen, what event can you listen, how can you contribute with those events, and creating business meaning to those APIs make it much more easy to manage them, to control them, to introduce new capabilities in a very governed way, as well as integrate with third parties in the cloud, like general ledger providers, or banking providers, or AML FinCrime providers. So this is really a big news for all technologies, and especially for financial services.
Absolutely excellent. Now, we've spoken about it before earlier in the conversation, but how critical has cloud-based technology been when it comes to that transformation you've been mentioning there? Is it as painful as maybe some board members at traditional banks think it might be? You know, like the old 1960s 10-year rollouts, or is it actually moving to a more agile, almost, as you said, events-based transformation?
So the cloud providers introduced two critical things. One is scalability. You can have access to compute power, to storage, unlimited access. You can scale your system to have capacity without limitations. Yes, you might find you get a big bill at the end of the month, but even though it usually will be cheaper than trying to build all of those capabilities on premise. And the reason for that is that the cloud providers invest billions in security and in stability of their platforms. That actually this is their business, and they put billions and billions and the top engineers working. Even the biggest bank in the world cannot afford such an investment in such a specific area. The second thing that cloud disrupt and bring exciting news is, again, those open sources. So if you want microservices, or you want Hadoop MapReduce analytics, all those open sources were hard to get. You really need to do a lot of security screening and bring a lot of experts in-house to actually monitor and install those open sources. And there were special companies to control the code. Now all those open sources are available, platform as a service in the cloud. And again, with few clicks, you get a very stable, a very enterprise edition of those open source capabilities. That means a lot for banking.
Now, the bottom line, I think, is always, when starting this transformation, what are the benefits? But more importantly, what are the short-term benefits? Because that's how you keep continuing with the digital transformation and getting ahead of your peers. So if you were to say to some parts of the organization that are less tech savvy and are a bit more apprehensive about greenlighting a digital transformation of this size for the back end, for the middle end, to the front end, what would you say to them that the short-term benefits are?
That's an excellent question. In the short term is get a control on what's going on. Own your system, own your process, get rid of complexity, get rid of unnecessary cost, and just put an order inside your environment. This is a big win. You find an amazing ROI in a very, very short term, and this is an amazing foundation for you to continue with.
Absolutely excellent. Now, that's in the short term, cutting costs and the ROI and also getting rid of the complexity. But I'm imagining it also by removing that complexity, streamlining the systems from IT to maybe the customer service. We're going to see some exciting new technologies in the long term. Now, you can obviously go as greenfield as you want, but what excites you in the long term that we might see from this development?
In the long term, first and foremost, again, the customers will enjoy much, much better service and proposition. You remember when pandemic was just started a year ago, people went and bought water and pasta and toilet paper, and some of them went to the ATM and withdraw cash just to make sure that nothing is crashed. For customers, when you know that your bank is running on a very robust, very resilient environment, spread over the cloud in many instances of replication, that is very, very safe service for you. And you know those big companies, all of your other services are also coming from those big companies, like your email account and your phone and a lot of your stuff, and coming now with such a robust financial service. And in addition, those banks in the cloud can innovate and introduce many more capabilities by partnership with other cloud providers, cloud solutions, other software that provide all kind of capabilities that not necessarily the bank can or should build itself. Integration becomes much more easy, very loosely coupled, so you're not vendor locked and find yourself in a problem of choosing a vendor for 3 or 5 years. All the contracts are very light and very friendly. So I think customers will benefit a lot. And as well, as you mentioned before, the employees, the people working in such banks can be more creative, can find themselves more impact to the society, to the environment, to people's life, and really enjoy what they love doing in their work. So a lot of good stuff.
Brilliant. And I think that makes such a good point. And it's things I've seen in other parts of banking as well. By removing the complexity, you allow employees to actually go ahead and do the things that they want to do within the organization and make it better for the customers. So Noam, I think that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for your time. It's been so insightful. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.